meeting. Maud Marin and Allison Bowen is here as well. Actually, I think she just went to kiss her kid goodnight. Oh no, there she is in my upper right-hand screen. Allison and I, as members of the Community Education Council, which since I know we have a few Californians with us, I'll say it's like a school board. We have a little less power than some school boards. All of our recommendations are advisory. But we do our very best to represent parents and what parents are concerned about. And what we have heard a lot of over the last many years, I joined the CEC in 2017, is concern about the quality of academics. And what we're here tonight to discuss is mathematics. And I'll say right before I introduce Professor Giuliano, sorry, having had a Giuliani in the city for so many years, I might mispronounce that on occasion. But what Professor Giuliano is going to talk to us about is her research in mathematics and in the way that we group and teach children in mathematics. And I will let her do all of the explaining about her research and what she does. And the reason we wanted to talk about that is because we passed a resolution in our council to talk about something that we were calling a math path. And the idea is really to look at math instruction in our schools. We govern kindergarten through 8th grade in at least one high school in our district, but we obviously have, large cohorts of kids, between 70,000 and 80,000 kids a year graduating middle school and going into high school in New York because we're such a big school district. And what we have seen as parents is that kids are vastly different, prepared in a very vastly different way as they get into high school. But we don't offer a vastly different math course for our kids in middle school. So what we're getting is a lot of kids getting some outside instruction and some outside acceleration for math, which to me, and I think to many of us parents, means a few things, one of which is our kids are ready for it, they're eager for it, they're interested in it, and they're capable of it. So we wanted to talk about what it means to not teach kids from 4th grade to 8th grade the same math instruction all along and how to better prepare kids to take some of the accelerated math classes that we offer in our high school that only some kids are getting into right now. That there's so much more to be said on this, but I don't want to do the talking in this meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Professor Giuliano to introduce and ask you, please, and to Professor Amelie Marian, who some of you know here in New York, afterwards, to do your own introductions if you would be so kind, and to give us some background on the research that you've been doing on mathematics instruction in the K through 12 landscape. And welcome to your first New York City Community Education Council meeting.
Sure, thank you. Oh, should I introduce myself next?
Yes, please.
Okay, so hi, I'm Laura Giuliano. I'm a professor of economics at UC Santa Cruz, and I guess I was invited. My name was passed along by someone from UC Berkeley. I've been working on math education in a few different contexts, like largely from the university perspective and admissions, thinking about the mess of this California math, the whiplash that's been going on here, the back and forth between algebra for all and then algebra for none has been interesting for me to follow from someone who's, does admissions to the University of California. And anyway, that's something I have a little bit of personal insight on, but not direct research. My research, I have a research agenda with data from Florida. So I will say, I don't know how relevant the research I've done is, but I'm happy to kind of give you the background and tell you about some programs going on in Florida. Florida is one of the most tracked states. Like the districts in Florida have more tracking than anywhere else, according to some recent reports in the U.S. So it's a kind of different context, and maybe an interesting one for some lessons. Just as a little bit of background, I've been doing some research in one district in particular, going back about 13 years, and it's gotten a lot of attention nationwide, partly because my co-author in this project is very well-known labor economist, was a Nobel laureate from 2021. So we've done some research on gifted education and on some programs specifically designed by this district to expand access to gifted and other advanced academic programs. And I'll just like summarize some takeaways from that prior research are that programs that they have two programs that work to expand access to these higher tracks, partly largely in response to the common critique of tracking is that it creates inequities and excludes students from disadvantaged backgrounds, which you can see evidence that it does in our research, because the programs that there are two programs that the district implemented to expand access. One is universal screening of gifted students. In other words, moving away from placement based on teacher and parent referrals alone and using a universal screening test that kind of refers all kids that meet a cutoff on an in-class test. And then the other program that we evaluated sort of in elementary school, and this is just kind of background, was a similar. So the state of Florida, like the state says you can't be gifted unless you get a cutoff score on an IQ test. So this district said, well, we're just going to set up a gifted program in every school, and then or separate gifted classroom in every school, and then sort of work around the state rules by saying, okay, well, now we have to fill up the classroom, so we're going to kind of place non-gifted kids in the classroom based on their test scores from the previous year, just as a way to kind of expand access to the gifted endorsed teachers and the more accelerated classrooms. And so both of these programs, the point I'm trying to make is both of these programs are like setting more objective ways to provide access to accelerated classrooms. I think this is relevant because all the pushback you get is about, tracking creates inequities, right? And I think one big lesson from my research is that it really depends on how you provide access, right? It doesn't create inequities inherently. It creates inequities if you do all the placement based on things that are, highly correlated with advantage. All right. So if you tracking based on more objective measures can reduce inequities. And so then the second conclusion that we had drawn from our earlier research is that when students obtain access to accelerated programs, including the gifted programs in this district, which are like separate classrooms, where they do all of their work in elementary school in a separate classroom with roughly the top 20% of kids in their school. There are big gains, and the gains are actually largest for the most disadvantaged kids. So it's one, I think, thing that tends to be overlooked in this debate. It's like many people fall on one side or the other, right? Like it's a bad thing or it's a good thing, but I think there's just like you can't just say it's bad or good. You really have to look at how the or regardless of whether your main goal is equity or your main goal is the academic advancement of the most able kids. So we've got some evidence that that introducing a tracking program actually tends to help students who are the very type of students who would be overlooked by teachers because teachers might not be aware of their potential because of cultural or language barriers or because the parents weren't aware of the programs. So I think this is this and the idea of using local norms to try to determine who can benefit from accelerated programs. I see someone has a question about this. I missed the chat there.
Professor Giuliano, we're going to go to questions at the end, so I will note those questions.
So this is gifted and talented, but I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of background because like our current research now is looking at math tracking in middle school, but I didn't mean to confuse you. I just wanted to provide that because I have less concrete evidence on the current
It
work
is,
is still in progress, but
right.
it's very related because this district provides provides this accelerated math program in middle school, and our current work, we've done some work following the benefits of getting into the gifted education program. And so the one thing that's sort of more complete is findings looking at long run outcomes for marginally eligible gifted students, and we're finding uh, that there are long run benefits again for disadvantaged populations of being of having access to the accelerated program. So the gifted program, once they get into middle school, a big part of it is accelerated is access to the accelerated math program. Um, but it's not just for gifted. All right, so let me describe. So the program that's most relevant to what you're interested in is a program again, and it's set up in middle school, but it has a lot of parallels to these other programs in the district that we've studied in that placement into it. It's not just, oh, you have to have a recommendation from your teacher or your parent. It's if you do well enough on a fifth grade screening test, your parents get a letter, say you're in the top, it's roughly the top 20%, the 80th percentile on fifth grade screening tests. And you don't have to be in it, but like your parents are told, you're recommended for it, and it exists at your middle school. Like every regular school is required to have one. So it's like goes a long way to addressing these equity issues and the appropriateness of the tracking, right? So we're of the targeting of this program. What we're doing now is we are evaluating the impact of participating in this program. The challenge, and so I guess it's like most of the research, they kind of take on tracking, on participating, program evaluation of educational programs has to kind of take one of two approaches. Either you can look at the effect of having this program, of the existence of this program relative, and you always have to like say, what are we comparing this to, right? Does this program have benefits? What's the counterfactual? Well, not having the program at all. That is extremely hard to actually nail the answer to that question because like in the back of your mind, you always think about, well, what are other differences between schools that have the program or not, right? So it's like it's really hard to do like a randomized control trial where you randomly assign programs to different schools and then hold everything else constant. It's many evaluations, although there are very few on this particular type of program. Many evaluations use these cutoffs to answer the question of what's the benefit of participating in the program relative to not getting into the program by saying, look, these kids who are right around the cutoff are very similar. Like if you look, you see, kids who have higher test scores are going to do better than kids who have lower test scores. But right around the cutoff, there's this jump in participation because right above the cutoff, lots of kids participate. Right below the cutoff, lots of kids don't. And so if you see a big jump in your outcomes, then you can attribute that to participation in the program. So that is actually what we're doing right now. And we have results there. I can tell you what we've found is that, participation in this accelerated program, I'll come back and describe exactly what it is, has benefits along many dimensions that you might think, outcomes that you might think of looking at, like participation in calculus in high school, the rate of actually passing calculus in high school, and we're able to look out further to college enrollment and even to graduation and earning a STEM degree because we have many cohorts going far back. And so we're finding that participation in the accelerated program leads to higher rates of advanced math course taking in high school. All of these metrics that are always the common concern that there's like large gaps in enrollment in calculus and completion of calculus in high school. We're finding that if anything, the benefits of getting into this program are larger for kids who are are more disadvantaged and less likely to get into to take calculus. But we're also finding for across the board, there's an increase in the probability of actually taking calculus and getting at least a C. So passing calculus and getting credit for it if one enrolls in this program in 6th grade. When we look at the very longest run outcomes, earning a STEM degree, earning a bachelor's degree in a STEM field, we're finding significant effects, interestingly enough, for girls. The girls are not, I mean, it still surprises me. If you look at these outcomes, even though in a relative sense, girls are less likely to go into STEM and girls are still underrepresented in STEM fields, when you look at their coursework, their trajectories in school, there's a gender gap in almost everything where girls are doing better than boys. Despite that, even girls who are doing relatively well in math are less likely to graduate with STEM degrees. And we're finding that getting into this program kind of levels the playing field in the gender sense. So it's definitely like I think what our evidence says, that what I'm willing to say and stand by so far, even though the results are not published, is that it definitely makes a difference. At the student level, it makes a difference if you, for a significant share of kids, whether they're able to start middle school on an accelerated track. All right, so I probably should have started with the program, but what is an accelerated track? So this program is starting 6th grade in a condensed version of what the normal track would be, just middle school math. So it's middle school math all in 6th grade, basically pre-algebra in 6th grade. So it's not just taking algebra by 8th grade. It's condensing everything that you need to know to take algebra into 6th grade, access to algebra in 7th grade, and then access to geometry in 8th grade. So it's the ability to complete up to 2 years of high school math before high school, which I think is not as common as just having the algebra option in middle school across the country. But I think even less common is this this sort of compressed 6th grade course. There's on and off ramps. So to get into it in 6th grade, you need to have it's sort of very, like I said, I think the way that they do the placement is important from an equity perspective. It really is like you're recommended if you do well enough on your 5th grade test. But there are still other on and off ramps. You don't have to participate if you do well enough in your 6th grade class. You can, even if you don't start out in it, you can get on it in 7th grade. If you don't get at least to be in the course in 6th grade, you're not recommended to go on and stay in 7th grade. So it's not like this fixed thing. And so in this context, we're seeing that it really does benefit kids at the margin who get in, which suggests, and this is the other important takeaway, it suggests that if the marginal kid is benefiting from the program, then probably even more kids would benefit from the program. If you think that one's ability to benefit from the program is kind of increasing in their 5th grade test score, it kind of suggests that the district could lower the bar in terms of who gets in a little bit further and still see benefits. That is all that we're really able to say at the moment. The paper isn't quite published yet. What we're trying to work on is to answer this question of, well, what if there was no program? Are kids who don't get in, are they somehow being hurt by the very existence of this program? Because I think often that's another argument that is made against the very existence of a program that allows some students to accelerate is sometimes seen as harming those who are left out. And I want to be very clear that our research does not directly answer that question, because it's not a all or nothing thing, but we're working on just comparing trends of different types of students in this district to a very closely matched district that doesn't have a similar program, just to see what we might be able to say about that. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to say something credible enough to address this question, because it's such a big question in this policy world. It's just like, is the very existence of an accelerated program harming students who don't get in?
You've asked so many unbelievably good questions, and I can say I'm rarely ever excited or looking forward to an academic paper coming out of being released, but I'm very excited about and looking forward to your academic paper being released and getting a chance to see it. You have hit upon sort of exactly what we were trying to address and start a conversation in our district with parents about in terms of our middle school math. We said 4th to 8th grade, but it could, it can be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade alone. I think an accelerated math program could start earlier. We hear from a lot of parents, in our district in elementary school of wanting the kids to do something more. And it is often, by the way, in elementary school where we see people accessing, you've mentioned the equity concerns, we see a lot of families accessing outside math acceleration outside of the schools. This is a public school system. So you have some kids who are paying thousands of dollars a year in a Russian School of Math or a Kumon or all of these, for-profit math centers that have opened up in our city. And they're good. My son is getting a great class in one of those, but he shouldn't have to. He should be getting it in our wonderful schools with our wonderful teachers. So that
I guess I would just, that's partly why I brought up the research on the 4th grade on the elementary school tracking, because I think it's relevant. It's not specifically for math, but it did have impacts on math scores.
It absolutely is. And and I want to turn it over to Dr. Marion to give a very brief overview of something that you mentioned, Professor Giuliano, which is the access to calculus in high school and how it works for our students here. She's very familiar with our admission system, has done a lot of great research and compiling data for parents who are trying to navigate what is a pretty complicated admission system in New York City. And one of the big issues that, as we've made changes, many of which were equity driven, is the access to calculus classes in high school. So there are more things to be said in response to what you just presented, but I'd like to combine these two before we move on. So Professor Marion, would you please address the access, the higher level math access for us?
Hi, everyone.
Sorry,
I'm Emily.
Your introduction first.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Emily Marian. I'm Associate Professor of Computer Science at Rutgers University. And today I wanted to discuss access to calculus classes from three perspectives. The first one is I'm a New York City public school parent, and I've just gone through high school admission with my son. The second one is, as I said, I'm a STEM professor, and I've seen firsthand how important it is for students to come prepared into college. Students who come without calculus are at a disadvantage for STEM majors, and in many cases in engineering school, calculus is a prerequisite for enrollment, for admission. And finally, my research, and some of you are familiar with my work on the New York City public school admission algorithm. I work on accountability and transparency in public decision-making algorithms. And ranking algorithms. Those are some facets of my research. And over the past few years, I have worked to make the process more transparent to parents at the middle school and high school level. So we have non-New York City attendees today. New York City handles admissions in different ways than other places, where for middle school and high school, students apply to a list of schools and they are matched to schools based on various factors. And over the years, there's been a lot of changes. And for middle school, a lot of it is based on a random number. So depending on how lucky you are with your draw, you get the school you want. And for high school, it's a combination now of random numbers and test scores. Sorry, not test scores, grades. But the grade factor is very coarse. So the one thing I wanted to discuss here is access to those calculus classes. And I had the first-hand experience this year. My son was applying to high school. My son is a STEM kid. He's interested in doing STEM. And he drew a bad lottery number. So I knew very well what that meant. There are still a lot of good schools that you can have access to with a bad lottery number, but you have to strategize a bit more. And so when looking at which schools would be good options, I should backtrack a bit again for non-New York City people. You have two main paths for admission for high school in New York City. One is an exam path for 8 or 7 specialized high school and auditions for LaGuardia. And the rest of the school, they're handled through a matching algorithm. There's a clearinghouse. You apply to 12 schools out of 447 schools that each have different programs, and you get matched, hopefully, to one of the schools you apply to based on your application and your random number. And so, when trying to figure out what to list, my priority was, I want my son to have access to Calculus BC, right? I know that if he wants to do an engineering degree, having Calculus BC is something that is important to have. And I'm just saying access to. By access, I mean being at a school that offers it, right? Then it's up to him to actually qualify for it. And we talk a lot about access to algebra in middle school. And of course, if you want to be on the path for calculus, you have to have algebra by middle school. But then the question is, there's not a clear pathway to get to high school that offers Calc BC. And so I took the application that the New York City public school system uses, and it was really impossible to find which schools offer Calc BC. The filtering system wasn't working. Luckily, they have open data, and I was able to find the school directory, and I filtered the school directory. There are 42 high schools in New York City out of 470 something that offer Calc BC, right? So it's less than 10%. Out of those 42, 7 are specialized high schools. So they're not part of the schools that you can list in the system. And so to get into this, you need to test, and the test is a test of math and English. And that is weighted evenly between those two. So my son did take the test, but we also looked at the main round. And part of the main round was like, okay, I want Calculus BC. So now I know there are 35 schools that I should select. New York City is a big city. So I don't want him to commute that long. So I started looking at just Manhattan schools. There are 8 such schools that have Calc BC in Manhattan. Out of these, I actually have them here. All of them are screened except for one. And by screen, the way screening works in New York City is that you have the bucketize children in 5 groups now, based on their GPA. And to be in group 1, a student has to have a 94 GPA or above. There's also some local GPA from the school. And my son was in group 1, but had a terrible lottery number. And that meant, and I knew that because I have run many surveys over the years of admissions to New York City high schools, that most of those schools in Manhattan that offer Cal BC were not an option for him. His lottery number, his random number would not let him, give him access to it. Luckily, as I said, he was in group 1, so there were a couple that were not the most convenient commute-wise, but that were accessible. Now, for some of his friends or other children who are in group 2, and you can have a student who's really strong in math and being in group 2 or 3, because your GPA has to be over 94. So a student that's 98 in math but has 89, 90 in social studies and ELA may not qualify for group 1. Those students will not be matched to a school that offers Calc BC. I'm talking about Manhattan students. There are, of course, other schools in other borough, but in assuming that they work commute-wise, most of those schools are also screened with the same limitations, or they're zoned and give priority to zone students. So there's really very few schools that offer Calc BC for the vast majority of students if they choose not to go the specialized high school route. So, we talk a lot about access to accelerated math in middle school, but we also need to make sure that students, and this is a CECD2, so I'm talking about Manhattan students, actually have opportunities to get to high schools that will offer higher level math, because otherwise we're not, and I'd say the New York City public school system is not preparing students for STEM majors in college.
Thank you so much, Amelie. We have I'm so thrilled to have two professors who have so much to say about the importance of and what the research says about accelerated math in middle school and high school. I'd like to put on the spot three people who I didn't say were going to speak, but I just want to introduce Superintendent Kelly McGuire and Deputy Superintendents Kelly Shannon and Reggie Higgins, who are here with us. I'm thrilled all three of you came. They were all invited to come and hear this information. I'm really, really thrilled and grateful that you're here. Of course, you know, now that we've heard all this wonderful information, I'm going to be suggesting that we do what the Sunshine State does in some of our schools, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I think it's something that at a bare minimum, that research is something that we should be talking about. And I guess what I'd want to do really quickly before we go to questions is introduce, I don't know if Rex is here, he might be on the phone, but I wanted to introduce a fellow parent leader, Maya, who is here with us, Maya Keshavan, if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Maya.
No, it's fine.
Okay, because, and I asked her to come here because I reached out because our former school chancellor, Richard Carranza, who I didn't agree with about a lot of things, was in San Francisco beforehand, and they made an effort. And the question of how do you help all kids at all different levels of it is a legitimate and valid question. And I think Professor Giuliano mentioned that you have to ask these questions about what, if you do this thing that's really good for some kids, does it have any negative impact on other kids? It's a really important question. And one of the things that happened in San Francisco, to my little understanding, but I want Maya to talk about it, is they stopped teaching algebra in 8th grade in an effort to improve everybody's math outcomes. And I think just the opposite happened, but I'm going to turn it over to Maya. If you can give us the briefest, but it's important, but the briefest description of that from a firsthand experience you can, I'd be very grateful.
Okay, so hi, I'm Maya. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm actually originally from Massachusetts, but moved to San Francisco like 30 odd years ago. I have two adult children who went through this in the beginning with Superintendent Carranza when he removed it in 2014. It was a huge controversy. The public was against it, but you know, what are you gonna do? So my children straddle this. My son was the last in 2013-14 who had Algebra 1 in 8th grade. He got to Calculus BC in 12th grade. He went to Lowell. He got Calculus BC in 12th grade, and then he went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI, in Massachusetts, and he's an electrical engineer now. So then my daughter is 2 years younger than he is, and I knew that I had to pay for her to take something in Algebra 1 in 8th grade concurrently with her middle school math so she could reach Calculus BC in 12th, because otherwise it was just going to be crazy. So I paid for her to take that in 8th grade, and she reached Calculus BC in 12th grade. She went to the same high school. And then she also went to WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and she just graduated last month from there. So, and she's biotech. So it's really important. If you're going to go into STEM, I'm 60, and in 1982, you did not need what these kids need today. So when I hear people say, when I was this age, I didn't need calculus to go into STEM programs, it's not 1982. It's, these kids need things that are, really important. And it allowed both of them to immediately, they got credit for it. It allowed them to immediately to hit the ground running and take sophomore level science, engineering classes, which then opens up a lot of projects and other things that they can do. So anyway, with San Francisco, they did this, and they did this for 10 years, and people have been, fighting. We've all been fighting this for 10 years, and it's made outcomes worse. It's hurt the underserved, under-resourced populations, because everybody else was doing similar things that I did, pay to play. And I think Rex is on here, who is a grandfather who actually went through this much more recently than me. So I think he's on the phone. Rex, I can hand it over to him if he's on the
Rex,
phone.
are you here with us by the phone? Craig, I don't know if you're here and can unmute. I can unmute a phone number if I have it.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know which one is his phone.
Why don't we ask both the phones to, well, 628 or 617, which one of those is likely a California number?
617 is Boston, is it Massachusetts?
Yeah, 628, I think.
All right, we'll ask the 628 to unmute.
Yeah, that's 628. There he is.
Rex, is that you?
He's muted again.
Oh, he's muted again. He might not. Let me see.
Okay, am I okay?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, Rex, we can hear
Okay,
you. Wonderful.
Fantastic. And Maya, that was a great, history of what you went through before I got involved with my granddaughter, who is now a junior here in San Francisco. But what really just upset me was the reason that San Francisco moved Algebra 1 out of the 8th grade was because they wanted to improve the test scores of Black and brown kids. Figuring erroneously, of course, it was proven wrong, that if they moved Algebra 1 out of the 8th grade into the 9th grade, then test scores for Black and brown kids in San Francisco Unified would improve. Well, a 10-year study was done. We call it a decade of damage for 10 years. But Stanford University did a study of the actual results of 10 years where Algebra 1 was in the 9th grade, not the 8th grade. And it did not, NOT, it did not improve test scores for African American and Latinx Latino kids. And so in my case with my granddaughter, I'm African American, I saw this coming. So when she was in the 8th grade, they had just the year before voted to move Algebra 1 out of the 8th grade into the 9th grade. So as she entered the 8th grade, I knew obviously she was not going to be offered Algebra 1 in the 8th grade. So in order for her to stay on track, like what Maya was explaining with her kids, I needed Josie, my granddaughter, to double up in the 9th grade. So I put her into a Algebra 1 class in the summer before her 9th grade year. So when she entered the 9th grade, she took Algebra 1 and geometry. In the 10th grade, she took Algebra 2. In the 11th grade, this year, she took calculus, and next year, her senior year, she'll pre-calculus, and then next year in the 12th grade as a senior, she'll take calculus. But I had to actually had her double up and pay for a course in order for her to stay on track. And, when they talk about the equity thing, it's like, are you assuming that Black and brown kids can't do Algebra 1? What this school system here has done, they failed to prepare these kids in the earlier grades. So that's the reason the test scores are bad, not because Algebra 1 is sitting there in the 8th grade. So anyway, I just want to give you a feel for what we went through. And also, I don't know if Maya touched on it, she took a credited course in Algebra 1 in the summer. So she could have skipped it and moved on to geometry without having to double up. But the San Francisco School District made the math place evaluation test so hard that only 4% of the kids who take a credited course in the summer before their 9th grade year actually pass it. So I became so angry, and Maya helped me out. She put me in touch with an attorney who would be willing to take a case pro bono, and myself and 4 other parents and 2 organizations came together, and we sued the San Francisco Unified School District on March the 20th, 2023. I'll never forget that date. March 20th, 2023, like my social security number. I'll never forget it because that's the date we filed the lawsuit. And it was front page news. I mean, everybody just said, oh my goodness, because a lot of people didn't understand how serious this was. Long story short, Algebra 1 is now back in the 8th grade when the doors open in the fall. And I'll take any questions. Or Maya, you can chime in if I missed anything.
I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's just, it's just been a long, 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 long battle because SFUSD, well, you all know this because SFUSD has been used as a model of success and nationally, because they lied. I mean, there's no other word for this. They said that it was successful, but it wasn't, and they made claims about passing rates that weren't true. And it took all of us. It took me putting public data request a few years ago because it just didn't seem right, and to expose this. So it's a long, drawn out. Nobody wants to hear a story of what has happened. But I think what San Francisco has shown, it's like this does not help. I mean, we've got it's like a 10-year experiment that it hurts the under-resourced the most, because as everyone
Yeah.
has said, the resourced can go out and mitigate for your own child, which I did, and Rex did. And here we are. They're going to bring it back in August. So
Well, that I will say, having been an education advocate here in New York and a parent advocate for many, many years, I know that the reason it's coming back and the reason I got to read in New York about what Rex called the decade of damage is because of parent advocacy and because of parents insisting on speaking up and telling the truth and holding to account the folks who should, who really have a responsibility to our students. I'm going to say one brief comment here and then open to questions. And I'm going to start with our superintendent and deputy superintendents first, while we have so many knowledgeable people on the line. But I just want to say, we're talking about tracking, and the idea is all the time that there's a stigma to the concept of tracking. And I think that what we're hearing again and again is the idea that this kind of tracking, helping kids that are ready to do this more advanced path, is deeply equitable. And it's something that helps more students access the sort of math classes that they need to pursue STEM careers at this time. The idea here is to expand, opportunities and options for students. So I wanted to ask our superintendent and deputy superintendents if they had any questions first that they wanted to, or comments or questions that they wanted to share.
Thanks so much. And I know that we are here primarily just to listen, and I appreciate the experts that are on the call and being able to hear from your experience. It sounds as if much of the work that has been researched is it definitely informed some of the decisions that we've made over the past 3.5 years. That our district has consistently offered algebra, but not always in a way that is as organized as it is, I think, now moving forward. So we're here to listen. We'd love to hear parents' comments and questions, and just appreciate the invite. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to go to Hunter Dare next, but one more thing I wanted to say, which is with Maya, Laura, and Amelie, it's like we have 3 women who are STEM based in their careers and in their thinking and in their choice, which is a wonderful thing. As the English major here, who's not a STEM based person, I'm very happy that we have all of your knowledge and expertise. Hunter Dare, I'm gonna can you unmute yourself? Hunter? Oh, I'm trying to get you to.
I unmuted. There we go.
There you go. We can hear you.
Okay. I tried to turn on my video, was unable to. But anyway, thank you so much for holding this forum. I think this is absolutely one of the most vital things that we can have in D2. I am a parent whose child is no longer in D2, but went all the way through 6th grade in D2. And I wanted to share briefly, my daughter is going to the High School of Math, Science, and Engineering next year, one of the specialized high schools. And she's very advanced in math. And she is completing Algebra 2 right now in 8th grade. I asked a question of a former Duke admissions officer about whether being a sophomore taking Calculus BC helped a kid stand out at top 15 universities. And this is the response that I got from the Duke former admissions officer. Hunter Dare, it depends on which high school the student is coming from. For many engineering and computer science applicants, it is relatively commonplace now at top 15 schools to see AP Calculus BC as a sophomore, linear algebra and differential equations as a junior, and Calculus 3 as a senior. I know how ridiculous this might sound, but particularly from high schools in the Bay Area, Austin, Seattle, New Jersey, and New York City, and other major tech hubs in the country, it is not viewed as extra, but par for the course for STEM applicants. My daughter's going to be able to get that at HSMSC. People that are at Stuyvesant are able to get that. But kids that come from D2 middle schools, and this is the main reason that why we left D2 middle schools, is because we were not going to be on a path to have Calculus BC early in her high school and be able to take these advanced math courses like linear algebra, like differential equations, and fully take advantage of the courses that are offered. The only parents that are able to do that are the ones that are spending money on private education, on the Russian Mass, on the Kumans, etc. And it's deeply inequitable for kids that can't afford that to not have the opportunities by not having geometry available in 8th grade in at least one school in the district. And so I'm so glad that the CEC has called upon the district to offer geometry and to give access to the kids that are ready for that in middle school. Algebra at this point and just getting to Calculus BC by senior year is not necessarily enough to compete for the best engineering and computer science majors and opportunities these days when you're coming from a major tech hub like New York City. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that data point, Hunter. I appreciate that. Do we have any other parents or members that want to ask a question? I don't know why folks can't turn on their video. I think we're having a problem with that. I don't know. Let's see. Tam, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm on the street, so it's a little loud. I was really interested in actually hearing about this program, but I think that I'm potentially misunderstanding maybe that what the impetus was. I was seeing this more as a pathway or a math path for all. And what I've taken away from it is that it's more for some. And I do know that in the flyer that was circulated to parents, it said that this is a program or a path, right? Math path would benefit all students. I'm not seeing how this benefits all students. And I think if I could just kind of articulate that a little bit and give you some questions, and this is for anyone that wants to answer them. How specifically would this benefit, the 80% of students that aren't in the top 20% or whatever your cutoff is, right? If the argument is that students need these advanced courses in middle school to be able to succeed in high school and then to be able to succeed in college, it seems like this kind of separate or selective pathway would disadvantage the majority of public school students. And then the other sort of question I had was, would it giving students or allowing for all students to have equal exposure to advanced math in middle school be the more equitable approach? You're talking about expenses. A lot of parents can't afford to get extra support. And then some kids will end up getting it in school while the majority won't be exposed to it and won't be getting it in school. And so I think those are sort of my questions. Like, how do you determine in 4th or 5th grade?
Yes, thank you.
Just really quick, Maud, who has the potential for growth, right? If you put a kid who's never been challenged and you give them a challenge and you give them the supports to meet that challenge, how do you know they wouldn't succeed in this program? So that's what I would like some feedback.
Thank you. Professor Giuliano, I know your screen is off, so I don't know if you can speak to this, but one of the things that you had mentioned in your program is, in your presentation, is having both on and off ramps in the program that you were looking into. I'm gonna give
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I can't turn, I had to
no
join
problem.
through my iPad. So anyway, the program we're studying does have on and off ramps. So it's true that, I mean, I would say the answer to that, why you can't have everyone participate in the program in middle schools, because probably not everybody's prepared. I mean, that's why you do need to start earlier. I mean, we find even bigger benefits of the kids who get into a, accelerated track in fourth grade. And I think the earlier you start, the more opportunity you have to eliminate those gaps. But I think it's a non-starter to pretend like there aren't preparation gaps, and that everyone is going to be at the same level. So to me, the bigger question is, why wouldn't you do something that benefits whatever fraction, if it's going to be the top 20%, top 50%, if it's not harming the rest, and potentially benefiting the rest? I mean, I think, that's where my research can't really speak to that really, although we're working on it, and I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation. But I think there's a difference between creating inequity because you're helping some students who don't have opportunities to do better, and harming students who are left out, which is, I think, a very different thing.
I would happen to agree, and I would just point out, and anyone else who wants to address this is certainly free to. There are a lot of students who aren't interested in pursuing a STEM career, who aren't interested in who can not take calculus at all in high school and pursue the course, the admissions to college or the learning that they're doing post high school in ways that are entirely not disadvantaged by not having calculus in high school. I am not urging the whole computer science for all, algebra for all, everything for all. The for all is something that got appended onto every halfway good idea in our public school system over the last few years, because the notion was that that was equitable. It's really not equitable to only allow kids to pursue something if all kids are able to pursue it in the same year and in the same way, because it's certainly true we have different preparation gaps. The kids that are interested in and want a STEM-based career need the accelerated math programs earlier. I think 4th to 8th grade should have those programs, but I don't need to design our curriculum. There are lots of different ways to do it well, but if we look to the research that Professor Giuliano is talking about, we can see the enormous advantage for kids that get the acceleration early enough so that they can take advantage of it in high school. And to Hunter's very good point, there are kids who want to be highly competitive in highly competitive STEM arenas. Not all of the students are, not all of the students in a given family are. So the routine and response, which is you have to justify that this kind of program is better for every kid, for 100% of the kids, doesn't make any sense. Not 100% of the kids benefit from sports programs or arts programs or music programs, but the kids who do benefit from those programs benefit enormously, and we shouldn't take away choir just because some kids can't sing, so on and so forth. Sorry for that mini rant, but I think it's a very important one, an important point to make on this. We had scheduled from 7 to 8 p.m. I plan to stick around for an extra 15 minutes to ask any questions or have conversations if folks wanted to, but if there are no more questions for our presenters, I would like to thank them all and not take folks' time. Len, do you want to say anything?
I just want to thank the presenters also. I mean, this is great. And thank you, Maud. Thanks, Allison. Thank you guys for setting this up. Thanks, Kelly and Shannon and Reggie for coming tonight. And thanks for Craig for technical support. And you guys are just a wonderful team. It's really appreciated.
To Professor Giuliano, to Professor Marion, Maya, and Rex, thank you so much for providing the parent perspective. I'm truly grateful to you for doing that. And to Kelly and Reggie, I say with a full heart that I hope this is the start of our conversation about what we can do to make math more equitable by providing more acceleration as we move forward. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to hang out, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy, or just wants to have a conversation, we're here until 8:15, but thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Lisa Marks. Hey, Hunter, I can unmute you. You should be able to.
Thank you. I was wondering if Superintendent McGuire was still on, and if I could ask what
We
what's the
just
next
lost
step
him,
in.
Hunter.
Oh, okay.
We have this is a conversation that Allison and I, when we formed this academic affairs committee, just for those that are interested, we started having this conversation sort of early in the year and explored whether or not, we could take certain steps. And then, excuse me, then we decide, we wrote the resolution based on a lot of different conversations and a lot of exploration, really decided that we wanted to have folks who have looked at this in terms of the data, in terms of both what acceleration does where they've done it and where they've tried it, and to know what the real availability was for District 2 kids. And that's where Amelie has a lot of both knowledge of the data sets and personal experience as a D2 parent.
With I think all schools having access to iReady or MAP testing, we have data points that could help identify on a universal basis what kids would be good for this program, or who might be most benefited by this program. And I think starting in 4th grade is the more equitable thing, because it gives kids, by the time they get into middle school, they've had a chance, and there's been maybe an extra on-ramp at 5th grade as well. So I would love to just see it piloted in at least, a couple of schools, and we could see then, and maybe even have some comparative data of how is this working in D2. And so
That
just
was
my suggestion.
that is precisely our goal, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to unmute Clive, who wants to add something.
Yes, hello, hello. Oh, hey everyone. Thank you, Maud, for putting this together, and thank you, Professor Giuliano, and thank you, Emily, everyone, for being here and sharing this. I want to let you know I find this whole discussion truly informative, and I would love to be a part of this in the future. So I'm asking, are we going to have more conversations about this topic sometime in the next month or 2 months? Just to let you know, I'm a D2 parent. My daughter's in 8th grade. She'll be going to 9th grade next year. And I think these conversations are very helpful to her and her future. Thank you.
Maud, you're muted. You're muted, Maud.
Clive, I wondered what those hand signals meant, but now I know I was muted. Thank you for that. It's something that I haven't had a chance to discuss, but what I was hoping to do is have, and we can do this by email outreach, to have some parent committees in each middle school, in each elementary and middle school. If there's a group of parents, a District 2 parents who are interested in this, we now have this recording, we can share it, and to create some sort of parent committees. And we can, I personally think the academic affairs, in order to pursue this, what we can do is have parents. As an 8th grade parent, Clive, with a child going into 9th grade, you're a little outside of our scope of parents, but I deeply appreciate your coming on, because I'd like to reach. I happen to have a 2nd grader as my youngest, and I've talked to a lot of parents who are keen with kids in elementary school to figure out how we could implement a pilot program in a school and test it and see if it works. And I think it certainly makes sense to test it and to see if it's helpful. And what we saw in California that the grandparent Rex mentioned, and what we heard from the parents from San Francisco, is that sometimes the very kids that were supposed to be helped by removing acceleration are the kids that are hurt the most. And to me, that's the sort of the equity counterfactual. You're not actually helping the kids you aim to help when you remove the acceleration. And I think many of us spoke anecdotally to the fact that there are a lot of families that receive outside math instruction to make up for what gets taken out of the classroom. And I'm saying we should put it back in the classroom.
Maud, I want to just jump in here. I know I haven't said much tonight, but I agree with you and I think that's a big thing here is that the equity for the parents who either can't afford or choose not to afford to do other things with their funds for their children to get that access, that they should be getting it in school. I think the other thing that people hit upon that I think is really important is the objective criteria that goes beyond recommendations from teachers in terms of access to the program. And I think that is a big thing that our experts talked about and something that we hear from other parents all the time. And I think it's very important that we talked about the fact that we do have these tests in school at the end of 3rd grade, beginning of 4th grade, where we can use the data based on things that we're already doing in the classroom to have some objective measures to select the children for this so that there is testing for all. And it's not just for students who have the opportunity or have parents who are pushing for the test. And then I also agree that on and off ramps are critical on this because children are prepared at different times to enter an accelerated track. And I think all of those things that parents have expressed tonight are important when we look at this. And the big thing is just let's start to pilot it. Let's see if this is successful for our students. We can do more than talk about it. And that is the big thing that we need to hear from parents is to show Kelly, Superintendent McGuire, that this is important and that we need to start these pilots as early as next year.
Agreed. I remember to unmute myself this time. Okay, if we don't have other questions, then I am going to call it a night. And thank you all very, very much for coming and listening. We're going to post this on our YouTube page so that parents who weren't able to join us tonight will be able to hear the information. I'm just so grateful for everyone who showed up. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Good night, all.